yo, can you film me like lip singing this song? It was a High School Musical song. It's definitely still on Facebook somewhere, so like I might have to like take that down. And then I didn't realize it until later on. I'm like, oh, I can make things that make people feel sad, happy, cry, nostalgia. So I think that's where everything like came together. I'm like, this is cool. Like I like this. We're just like, we have this camera for a limited time. Let's maximize the time that we have with this and then just pump out work. You know, we're in Egypt. We're getting like 5-star hotels. Everything's paid for. Like I just show up and just shoot. It was cool at the time, but then after a certain amount of time, we're just like, this is all like we're all gonna do? It's like, you don't have my style. I don't have anyone else's style. And that's what kind of makes you unique.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Unfold podcast by Tenfold Production. Today we're joined by
Justin Manabat.
And you are one of the
co-founders of Tenfold Production.
Sick. And what else do you do?
I also direct and DP some projects here and there.
Okay, cool. What type of projects?
It depends. It's all like, I'm usually like good with these like one man band type like docuseries or like a intimate production where I'm comfortable just like going out and getting it done myself. So when it comes to like stories like that or production like that, like I usually go that route versus like having a full team. If it doesn't ask for a full team or like another DP and I direct it, it's all dependent on the project, right? But with those type of projects, like I'm definitely comfortable DPing something like that. When it comes to like a big commercial thing, like I'm the last person to DP that. Like please do not get me on that. So, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Before we dive into that, I want to turn it back a little bit and ask you how you first got into this whole creative world.
Definitely started when I was in like grade 7 or 8. Like I was making these lip sync videos on my, I think back in the day, like probably a phone or one of the digi cameras. And I would ask my brothers actually to be like, yo, can you film me like lip singing this song? It was a High School Musical song. It's definitely still on Facebook somewhere. So like I might have to like take that down.
We're going to link it in the description.
but yeah, no, that's where I started. Like I just enjoyed making these type of videos. And then once I put out that first video, I got the feedback from it where like people loved it, people were laughing, people wanted more. And it kind of like clicked in my head like, oh, there's a power here that I can make something and then I can make that thing make people feel a certain way towards it. So I think that's what kind of hooked me in the beginning. And then I didn't realize it until later on. I'm like, oh, I can make things that make people feel sad, happy, cry, nostalgia. So I think that's where everything like came together. I'm like, this is cool. Like I like this.
And then how did you go from that to when did you start working as opposed to it just being like a hobby?
It started with like weddings, I think, right? So it was always a hobby, even before weddings, even going to like high school, it was always a hobby, just like filming random videos. I would film like people's like sweet 16 birthday parties. I would make like this like promo video to kind of promote their birthday. And then once I dropped that video, everyone in school was like, yo, it's gonna be crazy. That's a cool video. Like I love that. And then going to like university, it was something I wanted to do, but being in a Filipino household, like nursing and medical field was definitely the way to go. But like I wanted to go into like I wanted to do filmmaking or anything in that field, but I went into kinesiology, which is not my thing.
So you never went to film school?
I'll get there. Like I never went to a film school. I went to like a broadcasting school at Seneca at York.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't. I'm totally going off the topic of what the question was, but it wasn't necessarily like a film school, but it was more like I'm learning how to do broadcast, and I thought it was film school. So I'm like, oh, sick! I'm gonna learn how to do like commercials and documentaries and stuff. But it was actually more just like the switcherboard and stuff. I'm like, this is not exactly what I wanted to learn, but I'm gonna stick through it anyways. So I did 2 years of that. But to answer your question, to backtrack to answer your question, like before I had this, like before I was in the industry working, it always started as like a hobby, and then it went into like these small gigs here and there for friends and people that I knew, because I knew I was like always filming something. And then I went to weddings, and then from weddings went into corporate work, and then corporate work went into like bigger corporate work, and then met Jason, and then now here we are. Right. So it gradually just like got bigger and bigger every time.
So did you know that you wanted to pursue something like this before you went into school?
Yeah, I knew I always knew I wanted to get into filmmaking. I also knew that my parents wouldn't approve of it, or they're like, "What are you gonna do in that field?" Right. So it was a battle, like for me to kind of not do what I want to do and then do something else. But then obviously at the end of it, I ended up going into the field that I'm here now, right? So it's crazy to think that like now my parents are just like, oh, you know what, like he's figured it out, right? So that's what's reassuring for them to know, like, okay, he's figured it out, he's doing what he wants to do. So they support that 100%.
So originally you went to kinesiology and then you went into Seneca?
Yeah, actually.
How did that go?
So fun fact, Jason Dam, another co-founder, we were in the same lecture.
Really?
He was at the back of the lecture hall. I was in the middle, like trying to like actually learn. Jason's like, bro, I didn't do anything in that. But we didn't know. So we didn't know. It was such a crazy backstory. Like we didn't know we were in the same lecture or class until like we started talking about like, oh, what we do back then and everything. And then we learned about like we had mutual friends. We learned that we went to York University together, kinesiology, same year. I was like, whoa, dude, what the hell? So like he's like I definitely saw you like somewhere in the middle. I was at the back of the lecture hall. So just a crazy like fun fact about that whole thing.
It was like destiny for you guys to meet.
Yeah. Like if I just looked at the back of the thing and I saw like this one just passed out. Like I'd probably see Jason back.
Yeah, he told me that he didn't even go to class.
Yeah,
so like you might not even.
But you know what's funny? Neither I got barely same thing. Like I barely went to class because I wasn't passionate about it. Right, so I was in kinesiology for 2-3 years until I got like kicked out because my marks clearly reflected my passion towards kinesiology.
Yeah,
even though I wanted to do it because of like the medical field. And like, actually, I wanted to go into more like, I want to learn about the human body because my brother has cerebral palsy. So I wanted to learn more about that. But I just couldn't I couldn't click like understanding it. So I was like, let me just shift gears back to filmmaking. And then as soon as I got kicked out of the program, I'm like, okay, I knew this is time to change something. And that's when I switched programs to Seneca York for television broadcasting. And that's when I thought like it was a film course, but it was more of a broadcasting course. And then I'm like, it's still within the area of it's close enough, and I can figure my way to get to what I want to do with it. So I was in there for 2 years. But it's funny, even with that, I really showed up to class. I'm like, I already know how to use Premiere. I already know how to do some of the things that they're teaching us. It's just like, well, I felt like, why am I here? Like, I feel like I already know most of the things. And if I don't know, I'm just going to look it up on YouTube versus going to a class. Yeah. But yeah, so I never showed up to classes, even at that television broadcasting course. And the only time I did show up was like when I had exams or tests or I had to submit something. Even like there was a class, I think it was like an AV class or something where we were editing off Avid. We weren't editing off Premiere. Yeah. I have no idea how to use Avid, right? So I definitely finessed my way during that test. Yeah. And it was scary because my prof is right. He's literally right beside you watching you edit a clip that he gives you. I was like panicking. And then he comes to me, he's like, are you in this program?
That's a bad sign, yo.
So I'm like, I am. I just don't show up unless I need to. But what was funny though was like, when we had to submit like a personal project or something, I would submit like my own thing that I did on the side. It still got recognized, being like, whoa, who did this? Like that was kind of cool. Right. So I'm like, see, I don't need this. I don't need it. You know, like I definitely still benefited from being in the course, from the networking, the people that I met there. So it's still something that I don't know if I were to go back, I don't know if I would do it. But to meet people, 100%, I would still do that.
Well, let's talk about one of the most important people that you've met. How did you connect with Jason?
he like he slid into my DMs a few times.
Hey, yo.
Yeah, he slid into my DMs a few times because like I guess he saw what I was doing by myself, and I knew who he was. I knew like the stuff that he was doing by himself, and timeline just never like matched up to when I can actually like meet with him because I was like traveling either to like Egypt or Jamaica or something. I was doing a lot of like travel gigs back then, where I thought like that was pretty much what my niche was gonna be because I loved traveling, and my girlfriend and I like we went backpacking for like 6 months, and that kind of like gave me more of a bug to like, oh, maybe this travel thing is a thing, right? So obviously I didn't get much more into it, but then that was my like that's what I was doing before, and then Jason hit me up, couldn't find the right time to like meet with him, so I felt like he thought that I was like brushing, ghosting him or brushing him off. Like I don't want to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
But eventually, like we finally met up, and then we went to Yorkdale. And then
classic.
Yeah, we went to Yorkdale, had a meeting, and like he's like pretty much we're just like, yo, you're doing cool things, I'm doing cool things. Let's do cool things together, right? And then that's kind of how things started and snowballed from there. And then after that, like my set became from just myself on set to now just me and Jason on set. It was it's a fun dynamic to be like, so am I shooting this? Are you shooting this? Am I directing this? Are you directing? Like, what are we doing here? So like we had no prior experience to like what to do, right? So yeah, that's kind of that's how I met Jason, at least. So after that first initial conversation, the next week after that, we just instantly started working, and then haven't stopped since.
What type of work did you start doing?
We did a lot of like corporate videos. We called them like VBCs, like video business cards, where like we would show it to a business, and then we would interview the CEO or whoever, and then get B-roll around like wherever they work, and then we just cut it together, right? So like we did a lot of those, and we did a few like workout videos for like some workout trainers in the city.
Yeah.
So like that was our like constant gig every month, which was like, it was cool at the time, but then after a certain amount of time, we're just like, this is all like we're all gonna do until COVID, when COVID hit, and then everything kind of just shut down. But we had access to a cinema camera. And then we used that camera. Like we had it for like maybe a month, and we maybe made like 4 or 5 specs out of that one cinema camera in a matter of like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We're just like, yo, let's just shoot as much as we can, message all the people that we know, so that we'll just make something, and then while people are not doing anything, let's take advantage of the time. Right? So that's what we did, and then snowballed into like bigger projects from that, and then like here we are.
Were you also working on your own solo stuff as well during that time?
It was interesting because like we would have, or I would have a solo thing, but then I would figure out a way to make it like a duo thing. Like if I had a job, or if I had a connect somewhere that I already had, I'm like, cool, we can go back to it, but now I can like almost pitch or offer a bigger package than what I could offer before, because now there's 2 of us instead of 1 of us.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's another thing that like I learned. I'm like, oh, cool. Now there's like, we can make a better product with 2 people versus just myself. Right. So yeah.
And then I want to go back to something you said earlier about like the travel stuff, like the Egypt and the Jamaica stuff.
Yeah.
Like I remember like the first time I traveled for work. Yeah. Like I went to Detroit. But even then I was still like, yo, this is so sick. Yeah. I'm like, we're like taking a road trip to this other place. Like how, what were your experiences like going to these places?
Dude, it's like my favorite one was going to Egypt. I was there for like 10 days, and I was hired on to shoot. The premise of the shoot was we're shooting for a travel company, and they brought on these like 6 or 7 like travel influencers, and they each have like maybe like 400,000, 500,000 followers. I think some of them like hit 1 million. Like they're like big travel influencers, but they're not like production or video people. They're just travel influencers, right? So they hired them on to to like promote that travel guide, right, or the tour guide, and then they brought me on to kind of film the whole experience of everything. So I found that like really cool because I'm like, we're in Egypt, we're getting like 5-star hotels, everything's paid for. Like I just show up and just shoot, right? So like, but being there and traveling, and then the bag wasn't the best, but it was still something I thought was really cool.
Bag is a bag.
Exactly, the bag is a bag,
and you get to travel.
Exactly. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not complaining, and it was a fun time. Like Egypt was crazy.
Yeah.
I did a lot of like wedding, destination weddings. Where like we went to like Mexico, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and then within like those places, I would always try to like make something outside of the wedding, so that way I can like maybe use it for like more travel work.
Yeah.
So like I took those like opportunities to be like, oh cool, we're already in Dominican Republic. We got here for free because they paid for our flight, whatever. Let's make something else, so that way I can like promote that to get more travel work, right? So, but yeah, no, like I loved, and I thought that was my thing. I thought like the travel thing was a thing because like back then there was like the Sam Colders, there was the JRLEs, like those guys did a bunch of those travel, like they were like the travel guys, especially in Toronto. So I heavily looked up to those guys, but it was funny because like my style wasn't that style, or I don't think it was that style, right? So I just approached it like with the way that I know how, and I did. So would I do it again? Maybe. The bag's there, so we'll see. But yeah, no, the traveling things, it's always a fun time.
How did you first get those jobs? Were you just posting like your own content and then someone reached out to you?
Yeah, so like I got those jobs because it's through networking, through the people I know. Because I never, so for example, the Egypt job, I never did a travel thing before, but because the guy who ran the agency, he knew that I did videos. So he's like, "Yo, you want to shoot for this thing?" I'm like, "Yeah." Do I know how? No, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. So like it was purely off networking because I didn't have anything to show for it. Right. So, but when they gave me the opportunity to do it, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, show out.
Right. So because some people will be like, "Oh yeah, I had like previous experience, so that's why they reached out to me. They saw a video that was similar to what they wanted," which is like I get that route. But it was purely off of this guy knew me personally, and he knew I did videos. He's just, "Yo, you want to do this thing?" And I was there. Right.
How did you meet that person?
Through school.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. So it's just like, it was all just purely off networking. Like we had a friendship outside of, I guess the industry, and then he just hit me up. So I'm like, 100%, I'm in. Right. So I feel like a big thing is like, at least a big thing for me was growing up, I always wanted to go like the opposite route of where everyone else was going. For example, going like from elementary school going to high school, everyone in my elementary school was going to this specific high school in our area. But for me, I kind of wanted just to go like another pond. Like, let me go somewhere else.
Interesting.
I'm like, I loved everyone in my elementary school, but I'm like, I kind of want to go somewhere else. I don't want to go where everyone else is going. That being because I just want to meet other people and like see meet new people. Similar to university. When I went to university, I went there alone. Like I didn't go with friends that I met from high school going to there. I mean, obviously, because like I didn't get into like the Ryerson conspiracy. I didn't get into like I didn't have a lot of places to choose from. But at the same time, I'm like, I wasn't depending where I wanted to go based on other people. I'm like, let me just go there and meet new people. So like I felt like making that network from way back from elementary school to a different network in high school to a different network in university. Those are 3 different ponds that people know me as like, oh, yo, this guy, Justin, he does videos. Let me hit him up. I'm a travel agency. Let me hit him up because I know he does videos. And that's exactly what happened, right? So I felt like those moves that I did, on like maybe like not intentionally, it like landed me more jobs.
It all aligned.
Yeah, right. So like it kind of happened because of the people that I know.
Interesting.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah, I remember like I had a group of friends. I still do, but I had a group of friends since we were like 5 years old in the first grade, and we went to school all the way until high school. And then after I graduated, I was the only one out of my friend group to go to Ryerson. And then that kind of like forced me to be like, okay, I have to make like new
Yeah.
friends here. And thank God I did, because like my network expanded so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really just goes to show like how important it is
Yeah.
to make like a really strong net and like a big one as well. Because you really never know who
You never know.
offer you a job.
You honestly never know, and that can like that even leads to like your hobbies. Like for example, I joined different run crews in the city and run clubs, and they might like you never know who you're running beside. Like
Yeah.
we can literally just go for a run on a Monday night or Tuesday night, and then I'm meeting someone new, and then we get to knowing like, oh, like I'm Justin, I run a production company. Oh, like I'm Chris, I run a medical something. I don't know. But the next thing you know, there's like one like maybe like a year down the road, Chris remembers, oh, I remember Justin. I need a video person, and I remember Justin introduced like I met him through the run club. Next thing you know, I'm doing a medical thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like you never know. It's always like there's always a networking of something wherever
It's
you
opportunity.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And then yeah, let's jump forward again. It's a little like all over the place. Sorry, everyone. This guy's so full of good information. Let's go to like after you and Jason did all those specs. Where did that land you?
So after like the crazy like those Zcam specs that we did, it just landed us more eyes on us in terms of like who are these guys? Like what are these guys are pumping out these crazy like videos out of nowhere. And it just got us jobs. Like we got bigger jobs, and then that meant we needed more people because we can't just show it with just two of us.
Yeah.
So that made us like reach out to more people. Or like during COVID, like there was like I think there was a Discord group, or I forgot there was a group. I was in and out of it because like I wasn't really in it, but I also wasn't out of it. I knew it, but Jason was in it. And that group had other creatives in the city, like Adrian, Shaps. There's a few other people in that group. And then from that, like we just like I don't know how it happened, but we had more people on our set. And then that got us to meet new people, and then like learn about like, oh, this is what it's like to work with other people on a set.
Like a proper crew.
Yeah, like you have someone like figuring out the light, you have someone figuring out the sound, you have someone doing all these things that we're used to doing ourselves, right? So like we got to learn that, and then we got to meet other people who were also better at us at doing certain things. I'm just like, oh, so we don't have to do everything ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So then we just met, and that's how we met Adrian, and then we right away we like it's almost like we kind of see how we mesh and like other people on set, and that makes us like want to work with them more, or like invite them to like other shoots and stuff like that. So that's how like we kind of grew organically like that. And like an example is like Adrian had a job, and then he approached us with a job. It was a bigger budget than what we're used to. We're just like, whoa, let's go. Let's do it. Right. So again, then we figured out how to work with that budget, or how to execute the job. Right. So it's like a slow process growing from those like spec Zcam days into like more people on set and crew and stuff like that.
And then when did this start to develop into actual like Tenfold Production? When did that happen for you guys?
I think when we met at least in order, Jason and I like started doing things, and then Jason, myself, and Adrian started doing things, and then Zach was on a spec on a car spec because he was a car guy back then. I don't think he wanted to be the car guy, but he was the car guy, and then we brought him on, and then like he was also great. So then the four of us started doing more work together, and it actually started from like a weekend. One weekend we rented a mini LF. I think it was a mini LF. And then we're just like, you know what? Let's just pitch in our own money. Let's just buy like the coolest camera out there, set of lenses, and then we'll just make something on a weekend, right? So that none of us ever worked with a mini LF or cinema camera like that ever.
Yeah.
None of us has like, we have no experience with that, but we knew it just created some crazy images. So we took that weekend. I think we made like 3 or 4 different like specs with that. And from that, it kind of just like we realized like, oh, the four of us can do some pretty big damage here. Like we can do some cool things with the tools that we have and like the skills that we can each share. So that's pretty much how it started from that weekend, and then just snowballed from there.
RELF, eh?
Yeah.
Do you remember any of those projects?
Yeah.
Are any of them out?
It's out like on our like personals, right? Like we did a what did we do? We did. Oh yes. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so we did one where we had like, or Jason had to connect with a chef in Toronto. So we did like a chef food type spot, and then we did one where Adrian had a buddy who's a songwriter and artist. So we did like a little, I think, cover, and then we also did one where it's like I had a friend who's in the dance scene, and we got him to kind of like do a little dance vignette thing about him in a studio space. And then Zach took one where like he had a friend who's also like an artist as well, and we in the same studio like we made like I think a music video, I don't remember, but like yeah, we just honestly abused that weekend. Be like, yo, let's just call up it's the same idea when Jason and I had the Z Cam way back. We're just like, we have this camera for a limited time, let's maximize the time that we have with this and then just pump out work, right? Because then it'll come back, like people will see it, people will be like, well, what's going on, right? Yeah. So that's pretty much like what we did. Like we definitely took advantage of that.
How would you describe your guys' journey from there? Like since the four of you guys came together, how has it gone so far?
It's been great. It's like, honestly, it's like any relationship. Like as you're going, you realize like, oh, this is a cool thing. And then once you're in it, you start to notice like people's like working habits and styles and everything. So where it's like you go through like some rough patches because people obviously have different needs and wants, right? So once we notice that, and then we figure that out as a group, and like, oh, you know what, this is actually like we have different wants and needs. How can we make everyone work together? And also how can we make like what's our goal here? What are we all aiming towards together? Yeah. Right. So we hashed through like the ups and downs, and then now we're in a space where just like we're all just going in the same direction, right? Instead of working, it's like in a relationship where it's like you're not fighting with each other, you're fighting. No, wait, what's the saying? Like, you're not fighting each other, you're fighting for each. Damn, maybe. I don't know. All I know is like you're on the same team versus fighting with each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's how that's what we went through in the first like couple months and our first year, and then we figured out like, oh, you know, like we each bring like a specific skill set to the company.
Yeah, I've often been told by the other guys, and we always joke that like you're like you're like the HR.
Oh God.
Right. But like people like often describe you as kind of like the glue guy here, who like kind of keeps everyone together. Yeah. How do you manage that, and how do you think that's like an important thing that you actively?
100%. I think it's an important thing. If like, because then that's funny, because like I guess it comes from like my background, like working at a summer camp or something, where I was an assistant director for like 5 years, and being the like even maybe in my family too, like I'm being the glue guy, I'm making sure like everyone's good, and I like the human connection and human, like I like talking to people and meeting people. I think, damn, even going back to like going to different high schools and like meeting new people, like I always like the presence of other people, right? So I guess like being the HR of Tenfold, like it's like I might have to Google how to do it properly, but yeah, no, I always want to make sure like everyone's at a good space, right? Because then if one of us isn't, and then that can affect the business one way or the other, right? Where it's like, oh, we're not all on the same level, like what's going on, right? Yeah. So
that is a tough thing about like working with friends.
Yeah, especially because like at least for us, like the four of us, we weren't friends, we just knew each other, and then through working with each other, we obviously became friends, and then creating a business with your friends, but also with people who are in the same space or like same level as us, where it's like the four of us didn't go to school, like not one of us is like we see one of us as higher than the other, if that makes sense. Like we're not like bringing on someone who's like a big time director, and then we're just like dudes who learned off of YouTube or something, right? Where it's nice because the four of us came together and we're all learning together and we're all figuring out together, which is nice because now it's like, oh, we're all in this together versus like one person is like quote unquote higher than us or something, right? So yeah.
And I just want to talk about like your journey to where you are now, I guess, because I think all of us kind of started off in like a videographer space where we like do absolutely everything, but then we slowly like find out like our niche, what we like, what we like actually like doing. So where did you end up? Like, how would you describe yourself now?
Actually, you know, it's funny because I think I'm still in that like space where sometimes I still do audio, video, direct everything depending on the project, right? Like it's almost like a Danny Gewirtz in a way, where like he does these like projects by himself. It depends. So like for example, like the work I'm doing now, I mainly focus on storytelling of like documentaries or docuseries and or narratives. And I find myself in those spaces where those documentaries, sometimes I will just take it on myself and almost like one man band it. And then, but there's also narrative pieces where we have a full production team on there. And I'm obviously not going to do the DP work or anything like that. Like people are way better than me at that. So it all it's interesting because I still do that, like that videographer mentality of like, oh, I'm gonna do everything, but I do it with intention, with not just like I'm just gonna show up and then figure it out. Like I'm already on, like I treat those projects as a regular production if it was like a big client job, right? Like it's still the same intentionality behind it versus like before when I was just like, I'm just gonna show up and figure it out, right? So that's where I'm at right now, where it's like it's a little bit of everything. A little bit of everything.
I guess documentary is kind of run and gun in its nature, where you do have to kind of do everything if you want to get everything. Why is that the type of work you lean towards? I know you describe yourself as a storyteller, but where does that come from?
Honestly, I think I'm just like a hopeless romantic type dude where I just love feelings and stuff. Where I think it just comes from that, where I really enjoy like making the audience like cry or like think of themselves or reflect on themselves or something, right? Through something that I made, right? And it's just like I always gravitate to like a story, and I think I reflect on like my personal life in terms of like, oh, I didn't grow up in the like I grew up in a regular household, but I didn't grow up with like, oh, I've always wanted money, I've always wanted this. Like I didn't have the nice car, like the nice things. And I feel like I could almost have that underdog mentality going into like any story where you always want to see the underdog win, right? And that almost like goes into like my storytelling of like finding someone and finding out their story and then seeing them like excel in whatever they do, right? So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah.
No, I think that's pretty close. And then what type of work do you want to do going forwards? Are there any cool projects you're working on right now?
Yeah, there's a big documentary that we're working on that's coming up in end of March. It's this project where I'm gonna be traveling South Africa, and again, travel job, sick, documentary, sick. I'm in, right? So like I'm doing something there. Other than that, like it's also like maybe like thinking of passion projects or specs that I want to do, which will obviously cater more towards like the narrative storytelling spots, where like I've always wanted to do those, even like a car commercial where it's not about the car, it's about the story around the car, or like the story that the car brings. Like I love those spots where there's a whole like story behind a product or a brand. And that's something that I've always wanted to do. So like maybe this year and maybe next year we'll see, but yeah, like I've always wanted, I want to do those type of projects.
And then for the South Africa project that you're working on, how are you approaching that?
So I obviously have to do based on budget and like what I can afford or what we can afford. So it's pretty much, again, me doing a solo job. But luckily, I have my partner Larissa. She's also going to be co-directing, and also like I'm going to be teaching her like how to do audio, how to do like all this stuff. So that way she's also like a second set of hands. Because actually, so backtrack, for all the other documentaries that I've done before, or even in any other spots, I always go to Larissa after it's done. I always want her opinion after it's finished. And sometimes she'll give me like good advice or like good input or good feedback. And I don't have the things that she said because I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. Well, I didn't know. So for South Africa, I'm like, I don't want to come to you at the end of this thing because it's a big thing. I want you to be in the pre, like I want you in the pre-production where now I'm like, if you have any ideas, I'm not gonna miss it this time, right? So that's how she's on it now. And then but yeah, like based on budget and based on what we have, we're working with what we have internally. Like we're not really renting any cameras or bringing the biggest cameras out there. We're just using our Sony FX3s, 24-70s, the regular gig, but then using what we have to our advantage and making the best of it, right? So that's the approach to that documentary. Cool. It'll be fun. Fun.
As like a storyteller, and you do all of these big projects, sometimes on your own, sometimes with a team. Do you have any advice for people who want to do similar types of work as yourself?
Yeah, I think, like, will the advice be like if they want to be doing something that I'm doing, or they like how can they get to what I'm doing, or
anything that you feel like you can give it good advice?
You know what? On? I think a good advice would be, just work from experience, right? Like each person has their own story. Like I have my own personal stories. You have your own personal stories, and sometimes I bring that into the production where I have like a certain way that I've lived my life, and I'm gonna tell that story wherever it is through that angle, right? Or because maybe I can relate to the story, or I can empathize with the story in a way, right? And when you bring that personal touch that you have that no one else has, like you don't have my style, I don't have anyone else's style, and that's what kind of makes you unique, and that's your voice on a certain project, right? And that's what people will start to like see in your work, be like, you know what, I can watch this and be like, that feels like a Justin video right here. Like I can see that you did this, right? And that all comes from my personal experiences, and that's what anyone else can do. Like anyone can have a personal experience, come into a project and be like, I can see this way because I've lived this, or I know that I can relate to this. So I think that's what's a big advantage that everyone has, where you bring that advantage to a set and then you make like a masterpiece out of it or something, right? So yeah. I think that's a piece of advice that I can give.
Cool. All right, sick. Well, I think that's a great place to end it off. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem.
Imparting so much great wisdom. Make sure you guys follow us. Check us out on all our socials. We're also on Spotify and all the different streaming platforms now. So if you prefer listening to us that way, go give us a follow there. And then if you guys missed Jason this episode, don't worry. We got a new YouTube video coming out for you as well. So make sure you check that out. And then we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yep.